The political landscape surrounding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict entered a new moment of visibility and diplomacy today, as Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas delivered a statement in Madrid reaffirming what he called an unshakable commitment to a two-state solution. Speaking alongside Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez, Abbas used the occasion to address not only Europe, but the broader international community. Today, we held a constructive and open meeting, during which we emphasized the importance of the full and urgent implementation of the American President Trump's plan and the UN Security Council resolution to completely end the war, to allow the entry of aid and to stop the displacement. We reaffirm, Mr. Prime Minister, our commitment to the two-state solution based on legitimate international resolutions and to achieving the establishment of the State of Palestine within the June 4th, 1967 borders, with East Jerusalem next the State of Israel, which we have recognized, and for the two states to live in security and peace.
وتحقيق استقلال الدولة الفلسطينية على حدود 4 حزيران 1967 وعاصمتها القدس الشرقية إلى جانب دولة إسرائيل التي اعترفنا بها إلى جانب دولة إسرائيل وأن تعيش الدولتان بأمن وسلام وحسن جوار.
Urging an urgent and unified effort to end the war in Gaza and open a path toward a sustainable political settlement. His remarks come at a time when the humanitarian, military and diplomatic pressures surrounding the conflict are reaching a critical point, and when international actors are reassessing their roles, responsibilities and red lines. Abbas arrived in Spain as a visiting head of state, underscoring the symbolic importance of the country's recognition of Palestine in May 2024. That recognition placed Spain among a growing group of European countries that have moved beyond rhetorical support and toward formal diplomatic alignment with the Palestinian statehood aspiration. For Abbas, the visit serves as both a diplomatic reaffirmation and a political statement. Recognition, he argues, must translate into action, and action must support a final, just and lasting settlement based on internationally agreed principles. Standing side by side with Prime Minister Sánchez in Madrid, Abbas described the meeting between their delegations as constructive and open. In his own words, today we held a constructive and open meeting during which we emphasized the importance of the full and urgent implementation of the American President Trump's plan and the UN Security Council resolution to completely end the war, to allow the entry of aid and to stop the displacement. These remarks reflect a rare alignment between the Palestinian Authority and the strategic outlines of the US administration's diplomatic campaign, notably its push for a phased ceasefire, humanitarian access, and a political framework for post-war governance in Gaza. The reference to President Trump's plan is particularly striking, given the long and often turbulent relationship between previous US administrations and the Palestinian leadership. But in this moment, Abbas appears to be signaling a pragmatic readiness to engage with any viable diplomatic mechanism capable of stopping the war and stabilizing the region. The phrase full and urgent implementation indicates not only approval of specific elements of the American initiative, but also impatience, an insistence that the time for delay or incremental progress has passed. The war's toll, the displacement of families, and the humanitarian crisis, he suggested, require immediate execution of the agreed-upon measures, not prolonged negotiation. This shift in tone, if sustained, could mark one of the more consequential pivots in Palestinian diplomatic messaging in recent years. Abbas is positioning the Palestinian Authority as a cooperative partner in an internationally supported roadmap, and he is doing so at a time when global attention is sharply focused on Gaza. His reference to the United Nations Security Council resolution further underscores his argument that international law, rather than unilateral decisions or military actions, must guide the next steps. It is a message intended as much for the global community as for Israel. Diplomacy must override brute force, and the world must collectively enforce that principle. Abbas then turned to the political horizon beyond the immediate urgency of stopping the war. In a clear and direct reaffirmation of long-standing Palestinian policy, he said, We reaffirm, Mr. Prime Minister, our commitment to the two-state solution based on legitimate international resolutions and to achieving the establishment of the State of Palestine within the June 4, 1967 borders, with East Jerusalem next the State of Israel, which we have recognized, and for the two states to live in security and peace. The emphasis on recognition of Israel, the mention of the 1967 borders, and the reference to East Jerusalem all align with international consensus positions and serve as a reminder that despite the turmoil, the Palestinian Authority continues to advocate for a diplomatic solution rooted in widely accepted parameters. It is notable that Abbas delivered this affirmation in Madrid, a city with historical significance in Middle East diplomacy. The 1991 Madrid Peace Conference marked one of the earliest attempts to bring Israelis and Palestinians into direct negotiations under international sponsorship. For Abbas to revisit this location now, more than 3 decades later, is symbolically resonant. He is situating the Palestinian Authority in a continuity of diplomatic engagement, asserting that the path to peace, however obstructed, still exists and must be reopened. Spain's recognition of Palestine added a deeper diplomatic weight to the setting. For Sánchez, who has been vocal about Europe's responsibility to push for a just peace, Abbas's statement provides political reinforcement. For the Palestinian Authority, the recognition enhances its leverage in Europe, strengthens its international standing, and offers a platform to remind the international community of the legitimacy of Palestinian statehood aspirations. The mutual symbolism was intentional. Recognition alone is not the end goal, but rather a pillar supporting renewed diplomatic engagement. The voiceover narrator might then guide viewers to the broader geopolitical significance of Abbas's remarks. At a time when the war in Gaza has redrawn regional alliances, reshaped public sentiment across the Middle East, and raised questions about the durability of existing frameworks such as the Oslo Accords, Abbas's reaffirmation of the two-state framework may seem both predictable and bold. Predictable in that it reflects a long-held Palestinian Authority position. Bold in that the rhetoric inside the region has shifted dramatically, with many actors openly questioning whether a two-state solution is still viable or even realistic in the wake of destruction and political fragmentation. Yet Abbas clearly sees an opportunity, one born from crisis but potentially transformative. The humanitarian disaster in Gaza has forced a reckoning across world capitals. From Washington to Brussels to Riyadh, governments are reassessing their assumptions, their alliances, and the consequences of allowing the conflict to remain indefinitely unresolved. In this environment, Abbas is making a case that returning to internationally recognized principles is not merely symbolic, but essential for stability. The narrator would continue by explaining that Abbas's insistence on an internationally supported end to the war has implications beyond Gaza itself. The Palestinian Authority seeks to reassert its centrality in the political process at a time when competing factions, particularly Hamas, have shaped narratives and dynamics on the ground. By aligning with Spain, the United Nations, and even the US administration's plan, Abbas is reinforcing his message that legitimate political authority must operate within the bounds of diplomatic agreements and international law. He is also attempting to reassure international partners that the Palestinian Authority remains a stable and predictable partner, one capable of contributing to regional de-escalation and long-term governance in any post-war scenario. From Spain's perspective, hosting Abbas reinforces Madrid's emerging role in European diplomacy on Middle Eastern issues. Spain, alongside Ireland and Norway, has taken a more assertive position in advancing recognition of Palestinian statehood, prompting both support and criticism within the European Union. For Sánchez, the meeting offered an opportunity to strengthen Spain's foreign policy identity while expressing solidarity with Palestinian civilians. It also allowed him to frame Spain's recognition not as symbolic posturing, but as part of a broader strategy to encourage peace negotiations and respect for international law. Each of these elements forms part of the bigger question Abbas is trying to address: how to convert diplomatic recognition into practical steps for a political settlement. Underlying Abbas's remarks is a growing international anxiety about displacement, one of the issues he mentioned explicitly in his statement. The humanitarian situation in Gaza has reached a level that the United Nations and international relief agencies describe as catastrophic, with hundreds of thousands of civilians facing severe shortages of food, medicine and shelter. Abbas's call for full access to humanitarian aid aligns with appeals from global organizations that warn of potential famine and mass suffering. His demand to allow the entry of aid and to stop the displacement is not merely political rhetoric. It is grounded in the dire realities unfolding on the ground. The narrator would then contextualize why Abbas is framing matters beyond immediate relief efforts. Preventing further displacement is central to the political future of Gaza and the West Bank. If displacement continues unchecked, it could permanently alter the demographic and political landscape, complicating any future negotiations and fueling instability for years to come. Abbas's appeal is therefore both humanitarian and strategic. In his remarks, Abbas also implicitly addressed critics who argue that the Palestinian Authority has been too passive during the conflict or insufficiently assertive on the world stage. By speaking in Madrid, aligning with both European and US diplomatic efforts, and publicly reaffirming recognition of Israel within defined borders, Abbas is attempting to reclaim diplomatic visibility. He is presenting himself as a leader who seeks peace through established frameworks, not through maximalist demands or open-ended conflict. But the challenges he faces remain immense. The fragmentation of Palestinian political institutions, the destruction in Gaza, and the deep mistrust between Israelis and Palestinians all pose significant obstacles to the path Abbas is promoting. Moreover, the Israeli government's stance on Palestinian statehood remains firm in its opposition, and internal Israeli politics complicate any resumption of negotiations. The global context is no less complex. The United States, even while pushing for ceasefire arrangements, faces domestic political divisions and geopolitical pressures as it attempts to balance support for Israel with growing international condemnation of the humanitarian toll in Gaza. Arab governments, while calling for an end to the war, remain cautious in their support for the Palestinian Authority, mindful of their own internal political considerations. Meanwhile, broader regional tensions, from Lebanon to the Red Sea, underscore how volatile the strategic environment has become. In this environment, Abbas's reaffirmation of the two-state solution takes on new meaning. It is not only a reminder of Palestinian policy, but also an appeal to the world to salvage what remains of a framework many say is eroding. His insistence that the Palestinian Authority recognizes the state of Israel and seeks two states living in security and peace is designed to counter narratives that portray Palestinians as unwilling to accept coexistence. At the same time, he is reminding Israel's allies that Palestinian recognition of Israel has long been on the table, and that the reciprocal recognition of Palestinian rights is overdue. Throughout the script, the voiceover emphasizes the contrast between the gravity of the humanitarian crisis and the ambition of the political vision Abbas outlined. His words in Madrid bridge these two realities, the painful present and the uncertain future. His call for international implementation of the ceasefire plan, for unfettered humanitarian access, for stopping displacement, and for returning to internationally recognized borders illustrates a belief that diplomacy is not only necessary but urgently needed. As the visit concluded, the symbolic and strategic significance of Abbas's message became clear. Spain's recognition of Palestine, the historical backdrop of Madrid as a site of peace negotiations, the shared emphasis on international law, and the alignment, however cautious, with elements of the US plan all point to a potential diplomatic opening. Whether that opening widens or collapses will depend on political choices made far beyond Madrid in capitals across the Middle East, Europe, and North America. But for today, Abbas delivered a message that he hopes will resonate, that the Palestinian leadership remains committed to a peaceful solution grounded in international legitimacy, that it seeks partnership rather than confrontation, and that ending the war in Gaza must be the first and immediate step toward restoring hope for a region that has endured too much for too long.